first thing I want to do is point out that Shiism and Sunnism do not represent two completely distinct or separate religious groups in the way that, let's say, Catholicism might be considered more separate. There's less distinction between the two in this way. First of all, Sunnis and Shiites use the same scripture. They have the same Quran. They read exactly the same Quran. There are no differences at all. Of course, there's different interpretations that Sunnis and Shiites have of the Quran, but they read exactly the same Quran, exactly the same scripture. They also have the same memory, the same recorded legacy of the Prophet Muhammad and his life and the founding of Islam. And there's no differences except for a few minor points of emphasis here and there, but there's no real differences between the overall history of how the Muslim community was founded, the role of the Prophet, his character, how he related to people, and so on. Both Sunnis and Shiites understand the Prophet Muhammad to be the most authoritative interpreter of the Quran, the most authoritative source of religious knowledge, a secondary source of religious knowledge after the Quran itself. Okay, so they both hold the Prophet in that same position. Shiites and Sunnis also engage in the same religious rites. They have the same 5 pillars. Right? They pray. Again, there are slight differences in how they do the prayer, but they are slight. They are minor. They are not so significant that Sunnis and Shiites cannot pray together, and they often do in the same mosque. So you don't have to go to a Shiite mosque or a Sunni mosque, but either one can pray in either mosque. Right? They fast in the same way. Again, minor differences. And that, for example, Shiites consider the Maghrib, that is the sunset, so the sunset prayer, and also the end of the day of fasting, to take place something like 12 minutes later than they do in Sunni Islam. Right? Not really a big deal, quite minor. But they fast the same month of Ramadan, just like Sunnis do. Sunnis and Shiites make the Hajj together. They engage in all of those rites in the Hajj together. All of these things that are most fundamental in Islam, the Quran, the tradition of Muhammad, the 5 pillars, are identical for Shiites and Sunnis. They have the same social ideals, the same social practices that relate to marriage, that relate to inheritance. Okay? As we'll see a little bit later on, Shiites do have their own school of law. And so on a few points, they are slightly different, but their differences really are not any more different than they might be between 2 Sunni schools of law on different points, different issues. Okay? So again, calling them sects, separate sects in Islam, is not entirely correct if we take the official definition of sect. And also because there's not a situation where you have, one point of view, let's say, which is the Sunni point of view, and then at a certain point in time, Shiites break away from that and form their own group. Rather, it's more like a situation where you have 2 kinds of general perspectives on the nature of religious guidance that exist from the time of the death of the Prophet onward, and eventually those 2 separate from one another and crystallize into the different perspectives that we see in Sunnism and Shiism. And they develop largely in relation to one another. They develop simultaneously. And so again, thinking of Weber's idea of sect and so on, it's not really quite correct to refer to them as sects.